welcome back to Property Matters on Dublin South FM with myself, Carol Tallon. You can contact us on Twitter at iPropertyRadio or indeed email the show at hello@iPropertyRadio.com. I'm now joined by John Fahy, Director at Transact.ie, and Gavin Fitzergald, Senior Associate Solicitor at Leman Real Estate. So John and Gavin, you're both very welcome. John, as Director and Founder at Transact.ie, talk to us about what Transact.ie is and what it does.
Yeah, so Transact is basically an online platform where all the stakeholders involved in property, being them buyers, sellers, developers, estate agents, solicitors, where they can all see a transaction go right through from the very start all the way through to the finish of it. We also include things like digital documents, digital signatories, which have obviously really boomed in the last 12 months or so. So the demand for entirely digital conveyancing and banking process has really increased in the last 12 months or so. And I suppose the adoption across the stakeholders has really increased as well in the last 12 months or so.
Very good. When you say that where you're seeing the transaction, straight away I'm thinking, are you opening up to a more transparent service? But more importantly, rather than just seeing it, is there a way to speed up and ensure that some of the delays that are associated with conveyancing are overcome?
Yeah, I suppose the key thing that we've got, as well as a system, is we've really got a huge network of solicitors and estate agents who are behind this. So we've spent the last couple of years building up a network of about 400 solicitors right across the country in almost every county in the country. And what we're able to do right at the beginning of this is we'll prepare all of the legal documents up front. But I suppose the key difference from the old world is they're all put up online immediately. So everything is uploaded up online. And once the purchaser and a purchaser's solicitor come in, all the documents are automatically available online. I think that's the big change that you get from today, where you have to wait for sales advice notices to go out. You have to wait for the post to go out. You have to wait for documents to be posted backwards and forwards between solicitors. And we know this is the point really where the consumer really gets irritated, right? Because documents are moving via post. They're ringing an estate agent, they're ringing a solicitor, and nobody can tell effectively where the ball is. And this really drives the frustration right across the board in the process. And so with our system, the key message and feedback that we've got about the benefits is the speed is obviously a huge one if you can take out about half the speed, but the transparency element really comes through very strongly from the stakeholders. Knowing where they are, being able to see when a contract was uploaded, when a contract was signed, when a question was answered, that's a huge benefit to all stakeholders right across the board. They really want to get the transparency element to know where they are in a transaction.
John, that's all hugely important because we know that conveyancing really does get blamed for a lot of the delays, particularly as other sectors of the transaction, the purchase and sales transaction has started to adopt different forms of technology. Mm-hmm. But where does this concept come from? Were you involved in conveyancing previously, or were you just somebody frustrated by the process?
I was the disgruntled customer. I myself had tried to buy property and I was actually living and working abroad at the time, and I couldn't believe it where they were saying you have to come back and sign this or you have to post us that. And at one point, I think somebody tried to get me to fax something, and you just couldn't believe it, that this was actually how it was done. I think that was 2016 at that stage. And even without a technology background, I thought there must be a better way of doing this. There has to be. And I suppose that's when I began the process of really exploring what are the blockers or what is the real legal situation behind this. And that's kind of where I came across a couple of law firms like Gavin's. And what I found is there's actually a high demand within the legal profession to digitize this process. There is a high demand within the legal profession to speed it up, to give transparency, to go paperless. All of those things are there within the legal profession. Certainly what I found is that there is only a small minority of solicitors who actually don't want to change, who don't want to go digital, and the vast majority do. And that's really where, we came across Leman and we began working with Gavin and the team there. And really, we've seen from working with them how it can be done, right? I think that kind of kick-started the process as to how you can go digital, how solicitors can improve this process if we're all working on the one platform and I suppose working towards one goal.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. Gavin, solicitors certainly don't have a reputation for being very quick to embrace technology. And in some cases, I know myself from previous experience that that's quite unfair, having worked across the project that introduced one of the first fixed price conveyancing services back, I would say almost 20 years ago. And the only way that could be done was through the use of technology. So I think that despite maybe some of the tech laggards who are maybe giving your industry a bit of a bad reputation in this, there have been some really positive initiatives coming through from the legal side. Can you talk to us about your experience dealing with Transact?
I'd love to. And firstly, Carol, thanks a million for having John and I on. You're very kind for having us. And we won't forget your involvement all those years ago, Carol, in pushing through e-conveyancing and digitising the conveyancing. I'm sorry on behalf of our profession that it has taken this long. But yeah, no, absolutely. I suppose that John touched on it there, but there was a natural alliance between John and Leman in terms of he was already leading the space in terms of second-hand homes, already having, as he said, 400 solicitors signed up to it. And Leman being the first paperless law firm, I guess, and also the first firm to have its own technology department, really made the stars align for John and I to log heads. And I suppose the biggest thing that I've seen, Carol, in terms of helping John along the process of bringing Transact, particularly to the new home space, and just want to be clear on that it really, we find the new home space lends itself mostly to the efficiency of the process, and we can touch on that later. But two of the biggest things that we've seen with John and to feed into the process, I suppose, number one was the incorporation of digital signatures. So that was the space that we were already quite big on. I suppose I do have to give a shout out to my own wife who works for DocuSign, so I have to declare that conflict of interest up front. But we always were big believers in digital signing. Even as recently as 3 weeks ago, Carol, a client of mine, it was a commercial transaction, but we completed the transaction. The deal was done, the contract was agreed, it just had to be signed. But our clients were in Italy and France. And, in some ways, I'm very jealous of that document because it had a far better travel life than I have over the last year. But it took 2 weeks.
We know that feeling.
Yeah. But it took 2 weeks for the contract to actually be signed and returned, which is madness. And John touched on that. So we have incorporated digital signatures into the contract signing stage, which alone has shaved weeks or certainly days off the process. And then also, and John will touch on this later as well, in terms of the digital title aspect, Carol. And that's where the new homes really lends itself to, let's say 100 homes. The title typically is all the underlying title of house 1 and house 100 is almost identical, save for the number on the door. So it lends itself to an efficient process, which we've now incorporated into Transact and really sped up the process that way.
Yeah, I think on the new homes, that makes absolute sense. But say in terms of, because I am aware that a lot of these delays happen with older properties and secondhand properties. So one of the things we've seen through the Law Society is that over the past 2 years, there has been a concerted effort to try organise the transaction a little bit better. So making sure that vendors are prepared, because again, solicitors get the brunt of this. But in some cases, you have vendors who don't even request their title deeds be taken up from the bank until they're ready to be preparing contracts. So again, bringing unnecessary delays into the mix. So over the past 2 years, I know the Law Society was quite progressive in having these documents prepared, ensuring that these documents are prepared prior to a property going on the market, which is a positive thing. But does that, taking that as a jumping off point, does that then lead into a more efficient transaction? Does that kind of make it easier for more traditional law firms to embrace technology?
Yeah, I think as Gavin mentioned, where we've really seen the huge benefit of this is, I suppose, the process where that happens naturally is the new homes. So the last couple of months, we've really seen a lot of developers get on board with this on the new home side of things. And why it works so well on the new homes in particular is because at the beginning of a transaction, as you said, Carol, all that stuff is prepared up front already. And you don't have the problems in terms of getting title documents from banks, getting title documents rebuilt, getting title documents found again. All that stuff is effectively done right at the beginning, and it's a very clean start to the process. So as a person trying to sell new build properties, that all of your legals and all of your documents are there. even before you put it onto the market, you've got all of your documents on our system. If I can just maybe talk about one of the developments in particular that we've done through various stages of lockdown and how it's worked is right at the beginning, we can upload all of the documentation. And as Gavin said, where it really lends itself to is if you've got 150 units, there's actually only one title document really to that. And you're adding up additional documents on top of that. Another element we've really introduced, which has really sped it up, is after, let's say, the first 5 or 10 transactions are done, the reality is virtually all of the inquiries and the questions that the solicitors are asking have already been answered. So we, after about 10 transactions, basically put up the answers to the questions before they were asked. So a purchaser solicitor now coming in, he gets a notification, he's getting his sales advice notice information, he's getting his contract, he's getting his building agreement, but he's actually getting the answers to his questions before he's even asked them, right? And they're all up front and they're all online. So that's taking a huge amount of time out of the process, because we know today, and I think you touched on it, Carol, there was a lot of time up front where people couldn't find the documents. You had a lot of time lost between correspondence being exchanged via post. That was always a big bugbear of mine as to why they did that. And then I think Gavin touched on as well. And it's really in the last 12 months, while the technology's been around for quite a while, actually, the digital signatures, there's actually been legislation for 21 years for digital signatures. Really in the last 12 months, I think the shift that we've seen is that customers and then solicitors have gotten much more comfortable with digital signatures. That's been a big, big shift where they've really gotten comfortable and embraced it. And the amount of people now who will do things via Zoom and then sign things digitally has really increased. Whereas over a year ago, when we were looking at this, that was one of the blocks to people really taking this up, is that digital process, that digital signature, while people knew about it, there just wasn't the level of buy-in that there is now a year later.
Yeah, and Carol, sorry, just to jump in there, Carol, as well, I'm conscious that obviously this is a property podcast. You're going to have listeners from all walks of life and also purchasers, solicitors obviously tuning into this. And I think what's really important to just flag at the outset, and this is why John and I have worked so closely from the outset, and having a legal advisor like myself in the background, I feel has probably helped John a little bit, and other competition out there hasn't had that input, is that like if you can use a smartphone, and I think we're all very used to using a smartphone at this stage now, you can use Transact. It's really, really simple to use. I want to get that across as well. And that is why Transact already have 400 solicitors signed up. The local authorities, in-house lawyers, and that'll tell you enough, Carol, about how easy it is to use, have also signed up to it. I think that's really important. And then secondly is, obviously when it comes to new homes and rebuilding Ireland, we're trying to get as many houses out there as quick as we can, and we need to make the process more efficient. So that was part of our job, was really sort of like Elon Musk when he looks at the car, was to strip out all the parts. And as you said, Carol, see which part of the transaction itself was inefficient. And in fairness, the builders are super using technology when it comes to modular housing, smart homes and all of that, A-rated homes. The estate agent, like we saw on your podcast last week, when Sherry Fitzgerald we're talking to you about how useful and how used the remote viewings are working. So every stage seems to be quite efficient until we got to the legal stage. And that's where we said, okay, look, this needs to be resolved and can be resolved. And it's very much not a case of we've reinvented the wheel. Far from it. We've just made it a quicker wheel. And to touch on one particular aspect of it, Carol, maybe just to give you an example, and John touched on it there, is that what we found was, and we'll use an estate with 100 homes, let's say, the questions that are raised for the first 5 are just duplicated for the other 95. And in fairness to a purchaser solicitor who might be buying house number 50, they're not familiar with the title, they haven't seen the title before. And we're conscious that there's a lot of law firms out there now on the purchase side who are quite competitive in their fees. Like we're seeing some purchasers doing this transaction for 700, 800, 900 quid. So what we've done is let's make their life easy. Like it's all about making people's life easier. It's not replacing jobs or replacing roles. It's making everyone's job easier. So what we do is it's almost like showing our homework, Carol. Any questions, and John touched on this, any pre-contract inquiries that come up in the initial stages, they're uploaded transparently onto a platform. So purchaser solicitor on, say, sale number 12 can log in and say, okay, well, I was going to ask that question. It's already answered for me. And they can comfortably certify the title to the bank and move on.
That's That's a really interesting point, because, you know, the liability really sits with the purchaser solicitor. So obviously it's the seller solicitor, the developer, or the new homes developer that's feeding all of this data in. So say, for example, if I was the purchaser solicitor and I read the answer to a question I have, I read it. But because it's relating to all of the properties as opposed to my client's one property, from a liability point of view, is that enough? Or do I need that specifically addressed in relation to my client's property?
Yeah, I can sort of take that, John, as well. And it was, again, coming back from our feedback, Carol, from an early stage with John and the team. And so Leman, I think you're familiar with, Carol, had quite an innovative law firm, and our managing partner, John Hogan, is a visionary when it comes to property. And he won't like me saying that because he's super humble, but he is. And we had embraced this many years ago, digital conveyancing and so on. And really the most important party to bring on the journey with us was the Law Society. You touched on that earlier, Carol. And at the end of the day, unless the Law Society gives their blessing, you're shooting against the wind, really. So this was one concept that came up in a feedback conversation with the Law Society, and it's really important. And you're dead right. The purchaser solicitor, whilst they might only be charging 700, 800 euros, they're undertaking to whatever financial institution it is and their own client that the title here is fine. So what we did was we incorporated, it's essentially a button, Carol, to use the non-technical term, whereby at the end of the transaction, those replies to pre-contract inquiries can be downloaded or printed, whatever the purchaser solicitor prefers, and it is warranted and signed and certified by Leman solicitors. That's built in there, or whoever the vendor solicitor may be. I just have to flag that. But absolutely, it would be unfair and technically unethical, really, to expect a purchaser solicitor to just take our word for it. So no, that was something that we teamed up with the Law Society, built in, and the replies are certified by Leman. Purchaser solicitor can print them off and keep it with their file at the end of the transaction.
Very good, thank you, because that's you know, it's really important to get clarity and things like that. Also, John, I think it was yourself that mentioned digital title. Can you explain that to us? I'm sorry, I know we're running kind of low on time, but just really so that we have a clear understanding, what constitutes digital title now?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that maybe feed into that. And I think one of the things you touched on at the very start is, you know, we're aware as well that there are a number of other technologies out there, particularly the larger US ones, which a lot of the big developers, a lot of the agents will be very familiar with. And one of the things, certainly when we were trialing or building up this product, that became very clear to us is people don't really want more systems on top of what they've got. And that was a big thing that we worked on with Leman. So how our system really works as a core principle is it actually integrates into the solicitor's system. So that, I think, was a huge learning we had from when we originally trialed it. And it's actually a major differentiator for us against, I suppose, some of the other platforms that are out there. So when a solicitor is going on, and where the digital kind of title bit will come in is when they're drawing up the information today, they'll be doing it in their own case management system, right? And remember, virtually all these documents start as digital documents. So they'll start in PDF or start in Word. And what have been happening is people have been starting them digitally, taking it online, and basically then printing it and then posting it out. So what we've really done is we've integrated into the case management systems, both on the solicitor and on the estate agent side. So the solicitor can simply get the title document from his computer, never print it, right? It's automatically uploaded from his case management system onto the Transact platform, and then it's there online. That's where it exists. It exists digitally. It hasn't been printed. It hasn't been posted. And the other side solicitor can pull it automatically into their case management system, and they can then sign it digitally. So the whole thing is digital. It never exists in paper. And again, for a long, long time in law, it's never needed to exist in paper. It's just been a habit that's really been out there.
And Carol, I'm very conscious of the timing, so I don't want to bore you with any of the legals, of course, but just to touch on that for any purchaser solicitors who are listening to this, obviously the last and final document being the deed of transfer, actually transferring that portion of land into the purchaser themselves, that still needs to be signed under wet ink. We're not just there yet when it comes to the Law Society, and if they're listening, and I hope they are, and I know they're working actively getting there. The UK have already provided that, but 99% of the transactions, say for that last step, is all done digitally. And you'd be amazed. And when I talk to people about this who are not in the property industry, they think, Jesus, Gavin, that seems really simple. And it is. It's just taken quite a while to get us here.
Yeah, no, but look, that's absolutely understandable because, you know, a huge part of tech adoption is always about the human element. And with the human element, when we're asking people to change how they've done things, particularly when they're used to operating in such a highly regulated environment, there's always going to be this. It goes far beyond culture change when you're talking about regulatory environments. There are so many steps to ensuring that things are being done right. And it's a protectionist mechanism, which we can't fault, but it is great to see this proceeding. Gavin, off the top of your head, you know, have you any idea what time scale this is saving, say, for a conveyancing solicitor? What kind of time are they saving?
Yeah, we do. We actually have live details as it's going, and we're improving it each time. So on average, the new home sale between contracts issuing and contracts being signed, as it stands, are between 6 to 8 weeks. Using the Transact portal alone and nothing else, 3 to 4 weeks. So essentially, we're shaving 50% off as it stands, right? But John and I aren't stopping there. We have real goals, and they're not overly ambitious, and they're very realistic, and it will involve just a slight tweak to incorporate some of the financial institutions in, which we're doing. And we believe, Carol, we will have that down to 2 weeks. Contracts issued to signing 2 weeks, and there's genuinely no reason why that can't be achieved.
Good. Yeah. John, well done on Transact.ie. So I think it's great. We want to see this progress. Like I said, at the moment, we see a lot of blame being put squarely on conveyancing delays that perhaps aren't always accurate of or fully representative of the situation in a transaction. So it's really important that we keep the transparency and keep the costs down. And in terms of improving the service, improving accuracy, that's what it's all about. That's why we're advocating for technology in this. So thank you both for joining me here today. That was John Fahy, Director of Transact.ie, and Gavin Fitzgerald, Senior Associate Solicitor at Leman Real Estate. That's it from us this week. Thank you for listening into Property Matters here on Dublin South FM. You can get in touch with the show on social media at iPropertyRadio, or indeed email hello@iPropertyRadio.com. Also, my thanks to Peter Rice on sound and show producer Katie Tallon of Peer Roar Media. We're back at the same time next week. From myself, Carol Tallon, and all the team here, stay safe.